Hello and a very warm welcome. We're heading towards the end of lockdown 1.0 in India. How is India faring in a global context? How successful has the lockdown in India been in comparison with what we've seen in 115 countries across the globe? 3.9 billion people at this moment are under some form of lockdown or the other. What is the World Health Organization's view on the battle against COVID-19? Are things getting better? Are things going to get worse? To join us for perspective on this, I'm joined at this time, live from Geneva in Switzerland, by David Nabarro. He is the Special Envoy at the World Health Organization for COVID-19, one of the world's leading experts on public health, with a lifetime of expertise on dealing exactly with the kind of situation that we're having to deal with at this moment. Dr. David Nabarro, welcome to India today. Dr. Nabarro, from the perspective of the World Health Organization, how do you see the global fight against COVID-19 going? Are you confident to say we are heading into a zone where things are likely to get better from here on, or are we yet to see the worst?
Thanks very much. It really is a very patchy situation right now. I'm so pleased to see that many countries have rapidly adopted strong measures to try to interrupt transmission and reduce the opportunities for transmission. This, I think, is vital, especially if health services are going to be protected and populations are going to be healthy. So much has to be done without the luxury of testing to know where the virus is. The tests are complex to set up, and to get the kind of level of testing that nations would like to have is just impossible. So we have to work on information that's imperfect. We have to base what we understand about the virus from what we're hearing about people's symptoms and levels of disease and death. I reckon the world is getting ready for COVID-19 really fast. And I would like to, as I say, encourage continued efforts to help communities to be strong in the face of COVID, because this virus isn't going to go away. It's going to stay with us for the foreseeable future. So that community level preparedness is key to being able to restart economies.
You didn't really answer my question, Dr. Nabarro. You did give us a broad sense, but in the way that you see it, do you see from here on things getting better, or are we likely to see things getting worse, sir?
Well, as I say, I think things will get better, provided we can continue to build defences at community level through good quality public health. And actually, yes, I think things are going to get better. Just to answer your question directly, even though people in my position hate making predictions, my reason for this is I just sense that all governments all over the world have got the message about the need to be rapid and robust in the face of this threat and not to treat it in any kind of half-hearted way. So yes, things will get better, but it'll be a rocky road to get there.
That's interesting and important to understand as well. How do you see India's lockdown having gone? We're now towards the end of the first phase of our lockdown. An extension seems inevitable. In the way that you would have imagined things to go from where you're at the WHO, how does the WHO see India's lockdown, sir?
Well, we have been very supportive of the really strong action being taken by the people and the government of India. And although we don't have the luxury of detailed data, we do sense that you've been able to avert some very large outbreaks through this. We also are pleased to see that there's been stringent effort by all concerned, civil society, people's organisations, local government and national government, to protect those people whose livelihoods have been greatly disrupted by the lockdown, particularly to try to avoid a food crisis and to try to avoid increased poverty. So taken together, the work on health and the work to try to strengthen people's resilience, it's been really impressive from where I sit.
How would you like lockdown 2.0 to be different from the first avatar of the lockdown? The government in India now wanting to focus on livelihood as well as lives. That's the new focus. But there's also the fear that if you allow people to get back to normal, then the infection can spread really fast. What are your best, what's your best sense of how you can protect lives as well as ensure that livelihoods are not lost?
Thank you very much indeed. I would add an extra L. It's also about living, how we live, how we go about our lives. We're going to have to respect this virus for the foreseeable future until, by some miracle, it might be able to eradicate it. We've got to just be comfortable with this virus, and that means changing the way we live. Now, not everybody can practice their lives with physical distancing. Not everybody is going to be able to adapt to the new reality. So we have to build in the shifts in the patterns of life with also a real emphasis on livelihoods. That's going to require ingenuity, and lockdown 2.0, as you say, is going to be one where the major risk places are identified, the sections of economy that are most at risk and the parts of the country that are most at risk. And the release will have to be gradual, with those areas of high risk and those sectors that are high risk still needing added protection. It'll become much more granular, much more focused, and at the same time, I hope more data-driven. But that will be lockdown 2.0, helping us to establish the living processes that will enable us to keep on top of this virus.
Now, there have been multiple developments this week in the battle against COVID-19. I want to draw your attention to some of those. The one that alarmed me the most was a report from South Korea, which said that about 91 patients who doctors thought had recovered from COVID-19 were found to be reinfected with the virus. Now, what does that mean? That the virus got reactivated? Ordinarily, from what lay people understand, once you get the virus, you develop immunity for life. However, in South Korea, the virus got reactivated in some patients. What does that mean? How alarming is that? How do you make sense of that, sir?
Well, thank you. You see, this is the first time we've had a really massive pandemic due to a coronavirus. And coronaviruses are different, for example, from other viruses like flu. There's no evidence so far that having had the disease, you will then be immune for your life. It's so unclear what degree of immunity will come. So it wasn't a surprise when we heard that there were a number of people who were diagnosed, then getting and cured, then getting reinfected. We don't know whether it's reinfection from outside or recrudescence of the virus from inside. But I think it's just making the point. First, we don't know much about this virus, and we're learning all the time. Second, it's a really difficult virus. It's dangerous, and we have to respect it. So, yes, there is alarm, but at the same time, I believe that as we learn more, we will be able to adapt and adjust and establish a mode of living that is compatible with this virus being amongst us.
There have been multiple reports that have come out. I want to see what you make of those. The one report that came is a report which is being tracked very extensively in India, which says that countries that have universal acceptance of the BCG vaccine are countries where the incidence of COVID-19 is lower. The case of Portugal and Spain being looked at very, very closely. What's the WHO sense? If countries like India have had the tuberculosis BCG vaccine administered when most people were young kids, does that give those people some extra protection against COVID-19, sir?
Well, thank you. Actually, we did sense right early on that the way in which COVID comes into a population and the impact it has will depend hugely on characteristics of the population itself. For example, in communities where there are a lot of older people or people with other associated illnesses like diabetes or hypertension, we're now realizing that sickness and mortality rates are higher. We've also been wondering whether or not concomitant infection with other conditions that have an impact on the immune system might be relevant too. And then we've been wondering whether BCG immunization and other influences on the body that increase the capacity for the immune system to be active might lead to better defenses. I absolutely agree that we're going to see more and more evidence of factors that do reduce the risk in different populations, and this possible association of BCG immunization with the lower fatality rate is a really important hypothesis that has to be tested, and I look forward to seeing results from the Indian research which will help us know more.
I didn't really understand your response, sir. You kind of said certain things, but you didn't answer it straight. Let me put that question to you again. In the way that you understand it best, Do you believe at this moment, from the evidence at hand, Dr. Nabarro, there seems to be a positive correlation between a population having been administered the BCG vaccine at birth and their susceptibility to COVID-19?
We think it's a highly plausible hypothesis. We are waiting to see the results of the epidemiology that tell us whether or not this is true.
Good. Now I have a better sense of what you think. There's another study that...
Thank you for asking me to be more precise.
There's another study that came out which says that in cities where the population is exposed to higher levels of pollution, there seems to be a higher incidence of mortality as a consequence of COVID-19, which means if you live in polluted areas, like a lot of people in India do, if you contact COVID-19, you have a higher chance of dying. Because it attacks the lung, it seems fairly plausible to somebody who doesn't understand epidemiology, but in the way that you see it, do you find that, or what do you make of this study, sir?
Thank you. Again, I think this is a highly plausible hypothesis. There are reports, for example, that smokers tend to get worse affected by COVID-19. And so one would imagine by extension that people who are in places with high levels of atmospheric pollution may also be at greater risk. So yes, highly plausible, and we will continue sifting through the evidence to see whether or not that is actually a reality.
So at this moment, hydroxychloroquine is the one medicine that leaders like Donald Trump in the United States, President Bolsonaro in Brazil think of as a magic pill. What is the WHO's understanding at this moment of the efficacy of HCQ in trying to deal with patients who have COVID-19?
Thank you for the question. I want to stress that from the point of view of WHO, there is no effective therapy against COVID-19. We are aware that there are some medicines being explored, and we know that there are trials underway. Indeed, WHO is coordinating something called the Solidarity Trial, which is looking at the efficacy of different kinds of medicines. But as of now, there is no evidence that hydroxychloroquine or other similar compounds are effective in treating COVID-19. However, we do know that hydroxychloroquine has some antiviral properties, so therefore the case for looking at hydroxychloroquine is a strong one.
Doctors who are watching and for people who are worried about possibly getting COVID-19, from where you're at the WHO, Dr. Nabarro, what would you recommend as being the best line of treatment? God forbid, if I were to get COVID-19 and my doctor was saying that you have multiple options, there are anti-arthritis drugs, anti-malarial drugs, anti-HIV drugs, we can do different things. Which one do you believe has the strongest chance of succeeding? What's your view on that, sir?
First thing I'd like to say to everybody who might have symptoms of COVID-19, the most important thing that you do is isolate yourself. That's so important. That's the only way to interrupt transmission. Please don't rely on any specific remedies and imagine that they will cure you. We have no evidence of any remedy that cures. If you are sick and you go to hospital, I want to stress that Indian specialists working with other specialists around the world have developed what they call clinical treatment protocols. These are the best known protocols to use when people are ill. They are now being shared widely, and WHO is encouraging that sharing. Please use those protocols because they represent the best of collective evidence as to what works. But honestly, we do not have a therapy for this illness. And despite what you might read, there is no drug that we recommend to be used for the treatment of COVID-19. That is unfortunately the reality.
There is a study that came out which said that in areas where heat is more, like places in India, if the temperature is more than 18 degrees Celsius, you are less likely to contact COVID-19. That only 6% of the global cases have been reported from areas where the temperature is ordinarily more than 18 degrees Celsius. Do you buy that there is a direct correlation between heat and COVID cases?
I think this is a really important area of research. We did see that there is quite high transmission in Singapore, which is a hot place, early on in the pandemic. And so we were nervous about making any assumptions that heat would reduce the risk of getting the disease. However, many colleagues are telling me that they believe that actually the transmissibility of the virus may be less in hot climes because the virus survives less well when coughed out. So we really think this is an important question. We look forward to more research showing us whether or not it is true that the R0, the number of people who get affected by one person who's got the virus, might be lower in hot places because there is less transmissibility. We keep looking, we keep hoping.
So the WHO's own credibility has come under a bit of a global shadow. President Trump has said he won't be funding the WHO any longer. The WHO and its Director General are being accused of being hugely partial and biased towards China. As somebody who represents the WHO at the international level, how do you react to this mounting criticism?
Well, the WHO is an organization that's owned by all the countries in the world. And I've participated often in its governing bodies, initially as a representative of my own country, and then as a staff member of WHO. We do not have any kind of special relationship with any country. We work for every country because our responsibility is the health of people in the world. I know that at the present time there's a lot of criticism of the way the organization works, but at the same time I would like to suggest that for everybody who's involved in public health in the world and every person in the world, we have to be trusted because we are the organization that pulls together all the evidence, applies the best scientific criteria, and offers guidance based on that science. And that is our basic principle, and that's how we work. We're so sorry that there are people who question that, but we have to go on doing what we've been asked to do. We are doing this on behalf of the world's people. We base our work on science, and that's going to be our motto, as it has been, as it is now, and as it will continue to be. But we really like the fact that we're called to account. And as this pandemic evolves and it subsides, then we really want there to be lots of detailed investigations of how we have done and how other people have done. Because we do better when we've studied and we learn, and then we apply that learning for the next problem that comes in the future.
But there is a series of dots that connect the charges. And on each occasion, the charge generally is that you've been partial and biased towards China. I know you're not directly responsible because you're helping them with the COVID-19 situation, but you understand also what's happening internally. So I'd like your best sense on why is it that every time, whether it's on travel advisories, banning flights, whether it's safe to travel to China or not, each time it seems that the view of the WHO is the view that the Communist Party would like projected to the world.
I want to be unequivocal on this. There is absolutely no bias of the kind that you've just described in the work of the World Health Organization. The way we operate is on the basis of evidence. If there's evidence that one country has adopted strategies that seem to have been successful in suppressing outbreaks of COVID-19, we will share those findings with the rest of the world. That is done because we believe that the results that are being found are results that others need to see. That's how we work, no other way.
There are more than 36 companies that are engaged in a heated race to develop the first COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Nabarro, when do you think, realistically speaking, humanity will have access to a potent, workable vaccine against COVID-19?
Thanks for the way you asked that question. You said, when will humanity have access to a vaccine? And that's so important. The first step with any vaccine is to actually have a viable compound that can stimulate antibodies inside an individual, antibodies that are providing protection in a way that is effective and is safe. That's a hard job. There are some viruses for which it's proved really hard to develop vaccines, and we're not sure that COVID is going to be an easy one. So that will take time. And of course, the testing, the safety and efficacy testing has to be done properly through well-organized trials, and those have to be properly supervised. And then the manufacturing has to push ahead, and there has to be enough of the vaccine in order that everybody in the world can be immunized. And then the systems to immunize them have to be set up. And we know from previous massive vaccination programs, that's not an easy job. Why am I saying all this? Because I think we need to recognize that it will be at least 18 months until everybody has access to a safe and efficacious vaccine, which is why for the time being, we encourage everybody to develop systematic community-level defences against the virus. That's what's going to protect us.
You know, we've asked you some tricky questions. You've answered them as best as you could. There are multiple moving variables. Despite that, you're giving our viewers the best sense that the WHO has at this moment. You have a tough job. There are tough questions being asked, but we are glad that you took them and you answered them as you could. Dr. David Nabarro,
well, thank you.
It's been a delight to have you back with us on India Today, and we hope that we can keep coming back to you, hopefully on a weekly basis, to understand the evolving thinking in the battle against COVID-19. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd like to really express my gratitude to the people of India. I know these are huge sacrifices, but it will be worth it. And thank you to India Today for the chance to connect.
Thank you so much
Bye-bye.
for joining us. Bye-bye, sir. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.